As you know, the Black Lives Matter movement is bigger than ever before, and now more than ever, we all need to gather together as human beings and fight for a change. If you're curious to know how you can help, here are some options. 8can'twait.org details how we can reduce police violence by 72% with some simple changes. There, you can find a link to Campaign Zero where you can donate for the cause. Your contribution will go a long way. If you're interested in learning more about this movement and want to contribute, whether it be financially or just by learning more about the Black Lives Matter movement, please visit blacklivesmatter.carrd.co. Link will be in the description and in the chat, as well as being linked to a wide variety of petitions for the cause and links to donate. And if you don't have any money to donate, it's alright, especially in the climate that we are in now. There are options to donate without having to pay a dime. Clicking on the donate link will direct you to YouTube videos that revolve around the Black Lives Matter movement and topics revolving racial inequality. The videos will have ad space, and the revenue made from watching the videos will directly support the Black Lives Matter movement. Also, follow us on our social media pages if you're looking for a list of masterful film works that center around African American artists, culture, history, and stories. Please check out our handpicked films on our Instagram or our blog on filmocracy.com. Links in the description and in the chat. Everyone is doing their part for a better future. Join us. Join the movement. Let's make a change together.
Hi everyone, welcome to Filmocracy Talks, a bi-weekly open forum where we discuss topics filmmakers care about. I'm Jasper Gray, co-founder and head of partnerships at Filmocracy, and today I'm joined by Jose Escortia, our very talented filmmaker and producer for the show. A little bit about how this will work. It'll kick off with Jose, and as the discussion progresses, you can write in the chat box, ask and vote on questions, or raise your hand, at which point I'll make you a co-presenter and the open forum can begin. We'll talk about everything until we run out of breath, and then we'll have a brief 20-minute intermission during which we can all network with each other in smaller groups, and then we'll come back and share what we've discussed.
I'm excited.
Awesome. So tonight we're going to be talking about talent management.
Before we do that, I just want to add right here on the side for whoever joins in the future, we'll have links to our website, our social media, and we also have links to whoever's interested to either donate, learn more, or just be a part of the Black Lives Matter movement. So check it out there. Other than that, I'll give it back to you, Jasper.
Yeah. So Paul and I have known each other for a long time. And the way that we met is Paul was in sales over at Covert, and I was actually just an independent producer before starting the management shingle. And so I was running around kind of hustling different projects, developing them with writers, trying to set them up with development financing and different production companies and, basically everything a manager does, but I was the indie producer on them instead. And I'd had a pretty good track record of success in setting up projects. I'd gotten really lucky early on. And I had the faith of some pretty good people in town. Then I realized that, part of making films was obviously not just setting them up, but also independently producing them meant also finding independent financing for them. And a lot of that still is, but more so was the case when, about 4 years ago, probably at this point, when foreign sales had not cratered in a lot of ways, and so foreign sales were kind of the way that you could try and package something and get an MG to take and get that financed and, put it together yourself kind of. Obviously that industry is completely led Paul to ultimately, creating Filmocracy and kind of tapping me on the shoulder and being like, hey, I've got this crazy idea. I think the industry is about to collapse. What do you think? And I was like, I don't know, probably, if you say so. And he was like, I'm thinking about starting this new thing. And I was like, cool, tell me about it. And he told me a bit about it. And before he got like even 2 words in, I was like, all right. And he said, do you want to be a part of this? And I said, what do you want me to do? And he was like, well, figure it out. And I said, that is exactly the kind of partnership that I like.
Yeah. Learning on the job.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's the Wild West with all of this stuff. And I think that that's the cool part about being independent, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to put together enough things, the past decade to kind of always be independent, which has been cool. My perspective's pretty interesting from that angle.
I would say it's especially valuable now with like the way the landscape has shifted a little, because I know that right now, for example, in the film industry, there's a lot of inconclusive disputes as to how the unions are going to handle like what happens if somebody gets COVID on a set. And so right now, the actual like industry is in sort of a weird flux. So independent filmmaking is sort of free of that entanglement, And so that it kind of opens the door for independent filmmakers,
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think that there, is a monopolization of talent and production and financing through the big agencies and distribution companies, which effectively just is the return of the golden age of the studios again, and we're just not really calling it that. So
when you say golden age of the studios, do you mean like the way studios kind of like in the old days, studios owned actors almost like horses in a stable, right? Like props. You were an actor for a studio only, right?
That's what this is now.
And that's kind of a reinvention of that same system, right?
100%.
Okay, just checking. I just wanted to check my history.
No, 100%.
Just for background, we also have the Paramount decrees that are effectively being removed. And the Paramount decrees basically said that you're not allowed to have all of the vertical integration of one industry. For example, you can't be making the films and distributing the films.
So that's why, like, the theater thing had to be that was an issue. Paramount couldn't own theaters as well. That was a monopoly market
for sure. But now you see also Netflix is buying theaters because they're going bankrupt, right? It's like the theaters are going bankrupt. So Netflix and a lot of these companies, and also the bigger agencies as well, like. Eventually you try and control everything because that's how you make a lot of money, so it makes total sense. So listen, like there have been a couple big shakeups, right? Like foreign sales, cratering as a part of the industry is a huge thing and a big assault on independent film financing. Before that, many studios like Relativity collapsing and stuff like that. Like, when was the last time that you saw a movie like 40-Year-Old Virgin or, Talladega Nights or something like that? Like, it's been a minute since those kind of movies have been produced, and we just don't think about it anymore. But that was like,
if you really think about like comedies in like, let's call it cinema comedies, like you don't really get much of those.
No.
Yeah,
for sure. So, and then even, going beyond foreign sales falling apart as part of the independent film, like, way of financing things, then you get the WGA-TA thing, which is the agency breakup with the WGA because of packaging rights and everything like this. And like, there have been multiple big things, and now COVID, right? Yeah. There have been multiple big things that have said, what the hell is going on in all caps? And for the way that we produce content and generate it in general, and at the independent level, it's always being affected by that. You look at some of the independent producers like Dallasagné, who have basically like taken the ball and gone home with it and raise their own financing and make their own movies and get their own stars attached and distribute it all on their own. Kind of like, that's really a lot of, I think, where I think that they're doing a really great job, in terms of making their own independent system and satellite outside of Los Angeles because they operate in Texas. I think that there could be more of those. I think that it's going to require, it's all about the money though. So it's like at a certain point, it's going to require more people going back out and kind of wildcatting and pulling money that's not inside of Hollywood into filmmaking in general.
Yeah, just the activity of it, let's say, the actual. And I do think it's like the nucleus is going to break up into different little smaller nucleuses, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I just onboarded a new person at my company, and they, you know, for the management shingle. And, you know, one of the earliest questions, you know, was like, what do you think film is still going to exist? And it's like, it's a funny question, but at the same time, it's also kind of a legitimate question in a lot of ways.
Yeah. There's a lot of terraforming going on in the industry, you know, like.
Nobody knows. And anybody that says that they know, don't know. Those are the people that that definitely do not know. So, you know, that's my biggest thing. And I think like, that's why something like, you know, people can go like, oh, why be independent, or oh, why try and raise money, or oh, why do this film on your own? Like, you can definitely do it. It's just harder in some ways, but then you buy yourself freedom. It's, you know, and like, you know, like what we're doing at Filmocracy, like there are more opportunities for filmmakers to actually find an audience than ever before.
That's the key right there, is finding the audience.
We're figuring it out, and the adoption period of talent and producers figuring out that it's okay and testing the water, rather than just going like, oh, there's 3 buyers in town, or just 3 distribution outlets or something like that, and kind of like broadening their horizons, and, you know, is key to their longevity and success. So eventually we're going to get a lot of people. I think we already have a lot of people seeing it in their self-interest to look outside of the main studio model, but I think it's just going to continue to grow that way because there's no other option.
So as a producer, it's not really sidetracked, but since you mentioned you're a producer, you don't have the luxury of these studios where they essentially just finance their own projects, and it's kind of like a cycle for them to just let out stuff, make money from their own stuff, and then keep doing that. For you, it was like finding these opportunities and potential investors to put money into projects. Since you said you're an independent producer, how was it doing it? How was it doing that? Because when I hear that out loud, it almost sounds impossible to just to find like the right people to essentially give you money to finance these projects. So for you, who had to deal with that, how was that?
Yeah, it's always a different case, right? Yeah. I think, you know, I got really, really lucky with my first project, but I also think that, you know, there's 2 different things, right? There's 2 different kind of like funnels, right? One is independently raising financing from people outside of Hollywood, and then there, you know, which is like courting outside investors. And then there's something, you know, there's trying to find a production company or a company with a production overhead deal somewhere like at a studio or something along those lines to get financing from them as well. So as an independent producer or a piece of talent, you can do both of those. One of my clients raises basically all of the money for his films independently. They're all a little bit more mission pieces, you know, so they have a direct audience of investors that would be, you know, share the same belief and value system and are like, oh, that's the kind of movie that should be out there. So I'll jump in and listen more to the financing plan on this one than just like, you're like, hey, this is going to make a lot of money and super commercial. Like, that's not how you attract outside financiers.
And so it's more respect the art instead of just going, hey, you want to get rich quick?
Yeah, I mean, all investors want their money back. Period.
Yeah, that's the goal. Is the,
you know, yeah, and you know,
can you take this money and double it?
Yeah, and I think most times people want to see, you know, return on their investment of about 120%, right? So 20% over what they invested, and you know, I think that's. It's obviously feasible if the movie does well, you know, but everything hinges on this. Is the movie going to do well, and where it's going to be distributed, and what's the marketing budget, and all. There's a whole bunch of different, you know, factors that go into is a movie going to make money back?
That's one of the reasons why like the Blumhouse model worked, because they would like make really like inexpensive movies and then have a higher turnout, right? Like
that's usually the horror though. That's for not just Blumhouse, but any type of horror movie is always that mindset where it's like. It's such a for the most part it's such a small amount to make it, and then the payback is like tripled. And I think Blumhouse is just like a perfect representation of staying with that model.
It'll be like the pinnacle of that.
Yeah, for sure, exactly.
Yeah, I think that Blumhouse does it really, really well. I mean, I think Jason Blum is a brilliant producer, and I think that the team that he has working for him is also really brilliant as well. You know, a lot of the executives over that I know are really good at their fucking job, is what it comes down to. You know, and there is something with horror, which is you can generally make it for a lower budget and it can still find an audience, because if you look at a lot of the horror film festivals or just independent horror films out there, it's not so much about like, oh, is this beautiful and does it have a famous cast that I know about or any of these things. It's more genre specific.
And it's also more primal, like can I get a reaction out of the audience? It's more of a straight line, you know, like did they jump in their chairs or not? Like it comes like this, horror comes with this like primal engagement, you know, whereas other genres might be a lot more subjective, you know, where it's like, is this story interesting? Do I like this character? But horror, it's like, it's such a primal straight line to that reaction that it's like, it comes with that promise, right? For the audience.
It's also easier to market, I guess you would say. Like with a horror movie, you just have to show like imagery that represents horror or like something scary. But if you want a drama, it's like, how do I get an audience's attention by showing like, you know, some plot about, you know, a relationship that falls apart. It's like it's that type of market.
Hey, I don't want to cut everyone off from the conversation, but we have John with us now, and I just want to.
How you doing, John?
You know,
hey, John,
this is it's an open discussion, so you can feel free to just like join in whenever you feel comfortable.
Chime in, ask questions.
You've got a great mic.
Yeah, well, one thing I did want to mention, I've been a huge fan of films ever since I was a kid. I've been wanting to be a filmmaker since I was 8. I wanted to chime in and say, I think this is why movies like Happy Death Day work, because some people may think, oh, this looks like a simple idea, but then you really go into it, and what really hooks you, besides the plot twists and the premise, is simply the characters, because people like that relevance, but it also speaks something deep. It's very layered, and that's why Tree, I think, is a very great main character, and I think she's one of my favorite horror film heroines in the modern day and age of film.
That is a good movie.
Yeah. Speaking of that movie, they just announced the third film in that series, so
I'm excited for that.
It's making its money, so
yeah,
and it's a Blumhouse.
Yeah, it's a Blumhouse,
right?
Exactly, and that's another reason I mentioned it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think characters are very important in any story. You know, like they're the vessel in which you absorb the story. So it's got to be let's say a familiar and comfortable vessel enough to enjoy the ride. Like imagine comparing it to a roller coaster. No matter how good the roller coaster is, if the seat's uncomfortable, you're not going to enjoy it. You know, if you have like a stick poking the back of your head or whatever.
You know. Yeah,
it's someone you want to hang out with.
Yeah. It's just a metaphor that I'm making, but I think that's kind of good way of looking at.
And we're here for a couple hours. I'm going to hang with this guy for a couple hours.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely like, you know, Hans, you said something about primal, and I think that there is an attraction to horror and thrillers and sci-fi and everything that's kind of like adventurous and dangerous. It's like, you know, if you look at some of the earliest, you know, Nickelodeon films, like, and I don't mean like Nick at Night, but I like the actual Nickelodeons. It's like, you know, one of them was just a train running, you know, into the camera and by the foreground or whatever. It's like,
you're talking about the old school Nickelodeon, the Nickelodeons.
Yeah. No, it like scared the shit out of people, and people were like, "Whoa, what is this magic thing?" It's like but if you track back to like cave paintings and stuff, and like the earliest forms of storytelling that we have in recorded history, it's all like a "don't do this" or "this will happen," you know, which is like, you know, the trespasser moment and like breaking the rules or whatever, and that starts a horror film. Is like that's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's kind of. You know that shorthand.
It's also about that attention factor. Sorry, Hans. It's about that attention factor. So for like Happy Death Day, it's for the most part, if you guys have seen it, it is kind of like your run of the mill slasher flick, but it has like this extra formula to it where it's, have you ever seen Groundhog Day, but where there's a killer killing you and you have to solve your own murder kind of thing. Like that sounds awesome. Mm-hmm. And so when you kind of use that story or that concept as your way of marketing the film, in the right ways, you get a success like Happy Death Day. So I think it's that kind of thing that really helps those type of films.
Happy Death Day has that working for it. Yeah, where it's like an intriguing concept as well as being a promising fear. You know, like the excitement of fear. You know, like the phrase. Exactly. The phrase "sex sells." I think fear sticks. You know, like it sticks with you. Mm-hmm. Like our brains are designed to remember, like, be careful. You know, and so that is
people like to be scared.
You know. Yeah, it
like to be scared.
It sticks with you. Like you remember, I think, the things that make you feel afraid.
But do you know why?
Fear is something that we connect to the most. Like it's everyone has it, so it's something that's very relatable that can easily be shown on a movie. What were you gonna say, John?
Oh well, I was gonna say I like what he said, but I was gonna say it is very relatable. But there are some people who, just have the same everyday life, and they're like, I want to feel something different. I want to mix it up, so I've never been scared. I want to be scared. And I think that's ultimately why a lot of people go to these like Halloween horror night theme parks, or they want to go into a really scary movie because they just want to feel something different from the norm. Cause it's like a heart monitor. You don't want to flatline. You want to feel the ups and downs. It's very dynamic. It's all about dynamic emotion.
I'm going to bring in a little bit of history, though. Isn't it interesting how right after World War II, everything was like happy musicals because people were like, enough of this war stuff, enough of this fear. So I also think it's like it rides certain cultural like chapters that we're in,
True.
That's a big thing. That's a big thing right now, which is, since the beginning of this, everybody was like, oh, I've got a pandemic project. Let's do my pandemic project. And I was like, I don't know.
Zombie movies?
I mean, listen, no. Zombie movies are still cool. I mean, literally, like quarantines and like pandemics. Literally, like I've got to take on the pandemic kind of thing. And I don't know. Like again, like it comes back down to like who knows anything? Nobody. But a lot of people say that they do, and like the flavor in town definitely like became. We want everything to be very happy.
Yeah, too soon, right? Too soon.
No, they were like, I don't want to live in the quarantine, watch all of the riots, watch democracy fall, and then read a script about terrible things. Like nobody wanted that anymore. So, it's going to be interesting. Like I think that we'll have another buff of those like very positive movies being developed and very kind of like escapist adventure films. I mean, we're going out with a lot
comedies,
of those
like non-nihilistic comedies.
Yeah. So it could very much impact the industry as a whole, like you said, because it all depends on the current times. Like you said, World War II, everyone wanted something more positive. So you had these whimsical adventures,
singing in the rain,
mysteries,
yeah,
singing in the rain, musicals. It's like happy, dancey stuff. Yeah. Right. So it kind of begs the question, is this going to really bring more like animated films? Is it going to bring more comedies, more romance, but definitely probably not as reliant on the horror? But I don't know. Happy Death Day 3 is coming out and people are looking forward to that. So I guess it just kind of varies, but definitely
that's also because it was in production
pandemic related.
That's also just like scheduling, right? Like I'm sure that they were in production before that.
That's true, but I don't think there's going to be any pandemic films because admittedly, we've kind of played those to death too before this, which is kind of the ironic thing. And now everyone's like, all right, we've kind of done this,
Sure.
So Jasper, I have a good question for you. If you can maybe talk about it. You said you produced some films. Are there any films that we might know about? I see that behind you have a poster for Await Further Instruction. Is that a film that you worked on, or
this is a client's film, which is very good. It's also about a family that is in the quarantine. So it's like couldn't be more appropriate. It debuted on Netflix about a year ago. It's called Await Further Instructions. I mean it's brilliant. Johnny's brilliant.
I'll check it out.
So yeah, it's on Netflix. It enjoyed a pretty good theatrical release domestically, and then also worldwide. And then I mean, we're working on his next projects now, which are pretty awesome. So he's in, I think, there's definitely moments that are kind of like very reminiscent of like early Cronenberg, and it's it's low body horror parts.
Yeah.
So it's
I like that.
It's super.
I love that.
So I think we can diverge from the original topic very easily when you have a bunch of people who love film just chatting. But I would try to bring it back to management, just because Jasper is running,
and specifically talent management, right?
It's
So we got a little bit into your producing side, but I did want to talk about the talent management, which was another thing that you dealt with. And let me know if I'm kind of confusing this, but when I was thinking the word talent management, I was thinking like you were a hired agent that finds specific people for specific projects. And am I in the same ballpark, or is this completely different?
Is talent management like specifically actors, or is it general talents?
So I suppose I represent artists. There's a bunch of different people that I represent, but the day-to-day is directors and writers. And a lot of them are in genre. So you're close. Basically, you as a piece of talent, like a director or a writer, cannot submit something that's a script to a production company and have them take it seriously, nor even get past their unsolicited material policy. So you need a representative to submit it, either an agent, a lawyer, or a manager. In a very, very simple operations way, one usually has to have representation in order to be able to actually legitimately submit a piece of material to any production company.
And the reason that happens, right, where you have to kind of have like a middleman to help you have your material be seen, is because a lot of these studios and people that are looking for potential work don't want to get screwed over legally, where they get a script and then they read it and then they're like, oh, it's not for us. But then later on, they made a film that kind of was similar to the script. And now the person that wrote the script is like, that was my idea. And you guys went with it and never contacted me. So instead of dealing with the bullshit, basically, it's kind of like studios covering their asses and like, you guys got to go through this process in order to have your stuff seen by us so we don't have to get sued, is essentially what I understood.
Yeah,
let me real quick chime in. There's a quick example that I have of that, because there are scripts that sometimes get turned into something else. Like, for example, the original Power Ranger, well, not the original Power Rangers movie, but the modern Power Rangers movie, originally, the script actually got turned into Chronicle, which was released, I think, 2012, which is a great movie, but it got twisted. So the original script from the original writer got changed into something else. So yeah, you definitely got to be careful about that.
That's part of it. It's definitely a legal thing. And then it's also a tastemaker and kind of like comfortability thing. I mean, it's part of the process. It's basically like,
right?
Well, in a certain way, but I mean, you know, basically, like, how many writers do you think there are in the United States?
350 million.
Sure.
I mean, everyone can technically be one, I guess.
Yeah.
How many films get made on a yearly basis?
Do you know that number? Because I don't.
I know it's not 350 million.
No.
200,000.
So go with me here. The numbers is definitely less than 1,000. Especially at like a higher level of production and stuff. I would say that number is, you know, it's not very high at all. So take that back. And how many executives work at a production company? How many scripts can they read per day? The numbers don't make any sense. So, and you know, Hollywood is a system of gatekeepers, but by the way, that's every industry.
Of course.
Like if you look at commercial sales, if you look at technology sales, if you look at any industry, everything has gatekeepers. Hollywood is just a little bit more performative about them. You know, so a manager is known for their taste and grooming talent to a place where like my roster is very representative of my taste. When I get on the phone with somebody, they know me and that I'm a funnel for other things of my taste. Obviously all of the artists are their own individual voices and something like that, but I make my own relationships with a production executive or a producer or a financier and bring them a catered selection rather than them just being tossed thousands of things.
It's like building a palette of talents, right?
Oh, your mic on.
Oh, really? Oh, hello?
Yeah, you're a little far from it, that's why. No, you're good.
Oh,
I think you're just too far from it. I can hear you.
It did go a little bit down, yeah.
It's almost like you're building a palette, right, of talents.
Yeah, I mean, it's again very simple, like with other industries as well. It's a company that you're building. You're building a company with certain pieces of talent that do certain pieces of work, right? Like, and they fit into a certain puzzle and they create certain product that you then go and sell. And you, as one company, help build that product to a place where you're enabling your talent to be able to be on their own and, kind of succeed that way. And then you sell the shit out of the client. So that's pretty much what it is. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it in various levels, from the creative to the career to the sales, and I'm happy to go into any of those.
Now, do you only deal with writers and directors, or do you deal with actors as well?
I mean, I deal with actors, but I currently do not represent actors.
That's what about being a talent manager versus an actor's manager, right?
Why don't you manage actors?
Well, so I'll just answer the question really quickly. So talent manager is a way of yes, technically I'm a literary and director's manager. Most people say manager and they're like, what does that mean? So like if you say talent, people understand a little bit more of what that means. But yes, to refine it further, I represent writers and directors. Why I don't represent actors?
They're divas.
So
I just wanted to highlight that because I remember I had to learn that myself years ago, where there's like when you hear manager, most people who know a little bit about the industry will think actors, but they don't understand that directors and writers also have managers, and that's traditionally spoken as talent manager, so that they know. So anybody who's listening to this can be like, oh, okay, that's what I got to look for, if they're an actor.
For sure. And there's honestly, like, I think being in Hollywood is learning how to talk Hollywood. Yeah. Like that's a lot of it. Yeah. And Paul, to answer your question, why I don't do actors, I've thought about it. I've considered it. At the beginning of the year, I actually was building talent roster, for actors. And I did not end up going through with that or launching it officially because we got into a global pandemic. And I thought, well, I need to make sure that the main boat is sailing with the directors and writers during this time rather than taking on a shit.
You've already had that kind of boat.
Yeah, rather than because it's also like it's that quote from that Daniel Craig movie where it's like a life that you save as a life you take responsibility for. It's like when you sign somebody, most people, there's a lot of managers I guess out there that don't really give a shit, but that's not the type of manager that I am. I'm a very I have a very limited roster. I chat with all of the clients basically every day or every other day. Awesome.
Like a good coach would with their team.
Actually, I want to add on to
Can I actually quickly, while we're on that subject, to ask something? Just because the subject of talent management versus actors management, what would you say would be some of the differences in how you manage an actor when you were thinking about doing that and building that up? What would you say is kind of like the difference? Like, how do you sail each ocean, right?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the things that I was going to start working on and learning more of, because I don't think that you can really. It's like reading a book or like reading a textbook on sales, right?
And you can read to clarify, I'm not asking you to give an instruction manual. More like, what have you gathered so far? I guess.
No, for sure. I'm saying that I probably haven't gathered enough because I didn't jump into it on the talent side. But what I would say is it's really about the relationship between casting directors and talent. And I think that one of the things that I say for everybody is how can you organically be top of mind, not pushing top of mind? Because basically, if you send me a script which we get slammed with scripts all the time, and you go, hey, can you make this? What it means is, hey, can you give me money? And, you know, the Prince of Nigeria sends me an email about that every week as well. It still hasn't worked.
Yeah.
You know,
I got $1 million coming in to me in the mail from that guy.
Right. Yeah. I'm still waiting on my chance. I think he said it got lost in the mail or something. But, you know, the point is like everybody thinks that it's something that it's not. And what it really comes down to is partnership. What it really comes down to is attrition. And what it really comes down to is doing the shit that you're passionate about, not what you think is going to sell. Those are the three kind of things that go for all of my talent, whether they're graphic novel creators or writers or, you know, TV or directors or whatever. And actors is kind of a similar thing, but it's a little bit more difficult because charting your own course in that is dependent on the finished result.
Yeah.
You know, the finished product.
I want to add a little bit to that just before we start moving along with it. Just to clarify, there's a difference. You hear actors all the time say, contact my agent, talk to my manager. And there's actually a big difference between them. Like a manager is more of like, if I'm getting this, let me know if I'm explaining this right, but a manager essentially is someone that the creative hires as more of a source of guidance in terms of what they should do next in their career, while an agent is the person that kind of finds the work for them, correct? And the agent is more of like you have to be like certified by the government in order to actually get along.
So I would say, I would say there used to be a difference and now there's no difference.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. So what all of the changes that I was talking about up at the top have led to is the evolution of representation in the industry. And, you know, there's a lot of, obviously, like a lot of agencies are folding on the smaller level and even on the bigger level, or that some of the really big ones are quite a bit of trouble. So, you know, technically with the ATA and WGA negotiations or disputes, the agents have not been able to represent writers until they sign the new code of conduct, which some have and some have not. So for about a year or so now, like some of these agencies have not had to, you know, all of those writers fired their agents. So they had managers, and a lot of those agencies have gone out of business or had to trim. So those agents became managers in a lot of cases. So you're seeing people go back and you're seeing agents become managers because there's no rules and regulations to managers. There's a lot of rules being an agent. So for
it's like you only get paid 10% after the client gets his work.
That's a manager. That's a representative.
Okay, managers are allowed to produce also, correct? While agents are not.
Still, yeah. At this point, I think that we're going to see changes effectuated against that as well pretty soon. Okay. So, like, I transitioned from independent producing to managing. There's a lot of people that I know that are very close friends of mine who manage to produce. It's not really my journey at this point. I EP'd a film last year because I brought independent financing to it, but that's the misnomer. That's like the exception, not the rule. But there's less and less difference between an agent and a manager. It's really who is your business partner, and I think that people
for the audience, EP is executive producer, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You got to learn how to talk Hollywood.
Yeah, learn how to talk Hollywood.
You especially got to get the accent right, you know.
Yeah, you got to let it just roll off the tongue.
So I wanted to kind of chime in. I had a quick question while we're on the topic of writers and talent agents and managers and all of that. So say if there's someone like me, like a writer, you've been writing for years, you've written scripts, what is the best way to start out to find an agent, to see if there's a way to get your scripts handled to be circulated to all of these directors and different people?
So I would say it's everything comes down to research in this industry, you know, research and passion. And I think, you know, what I recommend, like I just gave a lecture to the graduating MFA class over at UCR early last week. And, you know, that was definitely one of the questions that was brought up a bunch as well. You know, what I recommend is like, who are your favorites? Like, if you don't have a favorite manager or like talent that's on a manager's roster, there's research that I think needs to be done. You know, because agents and managers too often are looked like at like you do for independent financiers, where it's like, oh, you're going to make me money. You're the money person. And less like, who's the correct partner for my growing business. Yeah,
your script
totally.
is punk rock, don't join a pop band, you know, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and it's, again, it goes back to the tastemaker thing. It's like, if a representative shares taste with you, well,
they're more likely to like your work, right?
Yeah, why would you be with somebody who doesn't like your stuff?
Then you can't help sell something you don't like or understand.
So you're able to weed out pretty quickly, you know, just by going on IMDb Pro or whatever and go like, who do I like as an artist? This is a representative that from, okay, well, maybe not that representative, but this company represents these types of people as well. I really respect these people. Obviously, this manager has helped develop this person's career to this certain point, and I respect that, and I love that. And you speak from there, because there's a lot of cold submissions that go out. I mean, you know, my assistant goes through it all of the time, every single day, which is just like, hi, X, I've got a script. Would you like to read it? And it's like, well, that tells me nothing. That says, hey, can you make me money?
It's almost like
cool.
Pitch.
Yeah, I like to make money too, but at the same time, like, the point is more like, it's more nuanced than that. You know, it's like, so yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, if you were going dating, you wouldn't just send out a bunch of, you know, nudes to random people and like put yourself, you know, that's not really putting yourself.
Some people find great success with that strategy. I just want to say, can't discount blasting of nudes just like that.
But the exception, not the rule, though.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think Paul chimed in a little extra sprinkle on there. I think I appreciate that too. So
Maybe you can talk about, like, if, let's say, John got you as the manager, you're interested in him, you sign a deal, then what happens?
that's a good question. Yeah.
So I'm a weirdo. My onboarding process is about 2 months. I go through. I have an email for all new clients that come on board, and it's all of their everything that they've ever touched that's a script or anything writing wise, if they're a writer. I like going through all of that, because rarely the thing that you're going to sell is the thing that you think you're going to sell.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually the thing you think you're definitely not going to sell. So, you know, and I think it's to that extent, like, I know a bunch of people that'll read a script and be like, cool, this person I can sell right here. That's more of a transactional relationship, which is, I'm just not that type of manager. I am transactional, of course, but like, I'm a different type of manager. There's like a partner manager and a transactional manager / agent or whatever. And I'm more on the former side. So my onboarding process is pretty long. I then do a pretty lengthy bio exercise, which is, you know, everybody and their mom's bio reads exactly the same now, which is, hi, I'm from XYZ. I went to this college. I graduated with this. I've been featured in this competition, and I've scored a semifinalist in this and a quarterfinalist in this and top 16 in that, and all of these things. And those are great. They don't mean anything to me. Because it tells me nothing. It tells me nothing besides the same thing which you said in the first line of your email, which is, hi, I'm a writer. I work with people who have made several films at a very, very high level, and some people that have never made a film. What I care about is, you know, what we try and build in that bio is why do you write the stories that you do? Why does somebody want to take a meeting with you? What is your voice? Like, you know, if you came here to get rich, that's what that first email says, which everybody's going to balk at, you know, if they take a real look at it. You know, the second option is something that's a little bit more intimate, a little bit more nuanced, and honestly, like, you can only be you. So I always direct everybody I speak to, client or not, to just be themselves and like, tell me why you actually wrote this. And if you can't answer that question, maybe that means you shouldn't have written that one.
Do you ever have in-person interviews?
I agree.
Do I have in-person interviews
with those people, that potential clients that you'll have? Do you ever like have like a in-person interview as like a final step maybe, or is it?
No, everything. Yeah, I mean, right now it's a little bit different in terms of obviously now it's different because of the pandemic, right? I'm not out meeting people like that. But
videos, of them talking.
Well, I think it all started. Honestly, a lot of my clients have come through referrals. Like, I started with a very small number, and they continued to refer people that were kind of like them, and but different, obviously.
So,
and
you mean like when you say referrals, do you mean like kind of like passed up the grapevine, like you like a sort of hot potato recommendation, or
no? Like I represented a writer,
gotcha.
And she brought me another writer. She recommended one of her friends, and I met with her friend. And
connections.
Yeah, and I've also brought on people who have reached out colder, right? Like, and that's, again, it's the material that they have, right? And it's my connection to that material, but it's also like who that person is. Because honestly, I don't think that at the end of the day, I'm actually selling a project. I'm selling the person behind the project. And I think that that's what we always miss.
That's at the risk of sounding cheesy, but I think this is still true. It's like with art, I think you have to believe in it, and you can't really do anything with something you don't believe in. And that's why I think you rely on that sort of referral and that sort of connection to make, because you have to believe in the artist or the, to be able to do something with them. It's not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, I always describe myself as a fan before being a manager or a producer or whatever. Like, I'm a fan. Like, I the only time I can really connect and be a human being is when I'm in the dark of the matinee, and suddenly I just burst into tears at any scene. It's like, other than that, I'm a pretty cold, steely guy. But that's my connection is because it's really, really important to me. Then the work that my clients do is really important to me because I'm a fan. I think not enough people. I think that that's one of the weird things about our industry is people. See all the glitz and glamour, and they forget that they love film. They forget that they love
still a circus.
Really glad that I get to hear that you don't just see clients as dollar signs. It's not like that at all. At least for you, and that's really cool to hear because we, for the most part, a lot of things like Paul, when me and him were talking about festivals, like he said it straight up, and it's a little disheartening. He's like, no one gives a fuck about how many laurels you have. So it's like that kind of mentality where it's like, oh, okay, at least he's looking at the artist for being an artist, not dollar signs.
And I think at the end of the day...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine.
Oh, okay. It's funny. We both said I think at the same time. Well, I was going to say, because if you're not in love with what you do, then what's the point of doing it? I mean, here you have different directors with their identities. I mean, here you have Quentin Tarantino, who loves violence and spaghetti westerns and sometimes philosophy. Here you have Michael Bay, who loves money and explosions. And you will have this sense of identity, that one thing or two different things that you're known for. And that to me stands out as something important, that and that handshake that you're talking about between the client and the person they're working for, whether it be writers, filmmakers. At the end of the day, you're like friends. Yes, your professional relationship, but at the end of the day, it is kind of like friends doing something they enjoy. Maybe they'll keep it professional. Maybe they'll become close friends. But you got people like Seth Rogen, James Franco, they're close friends. They work together. Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, they wrote and acted in Good Will Hunting. They got to work with Robin Williams and Kevin Smith,
Yeah, I think that it's incredibly important. Like, Hollywood is an entrepreneurial industry, period. Every film has its own LLC for a reason. It is literally its own property to invest in that you have to go raise investment financing for through a bigger VC funds, or if you want to call it that way, or, independent financing and, friends and family rounds and all this kind of stuff. It's all the same. What people don't know, because if somebody's not an entrepreneur, hasn't tried to start their own company, or hasn't drawn up partnership agreements or something along those lines, everybody just assumes that they're going to make money because they're used to getting paid at a job. And in reality, if you're an entrepreneur and you have a partner, you realize that you don't make money unless your company is making money and you are both making money and fitting into that scheme. So when you kind of pull it back and look at it like that and go, as an artist, I'm an entrepreneur, and as an artist, I need more people at my company, and somebody who's going to be that sales rep and that kind of, leading the charge and stuff like that person, well, then that's more along the lines of what I think being a representative should be.
So
I agree.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna add in. John, he mentioned he's a writer, and you kind of let us know the process of how writers try to reach out to you, and with your process of how you deal with writers. You also got two directors here, me and Hans, and just out of curiosity, how would you handle that? Would it be the same process for you, or do you just see their catalog of short films or past works?
Yeah, I mean, it's different. Like for writers, for everybody, I look at log lines and bios first.
Okay.
Because it's, again, very quickly, why the fuck are you a filmmaker? Right?
Exactly.
If it's because I like making films, that's great. That's not my style, right? If it's because I can only do this one thing and I'm crazy and I'm that's all I can do with my life, and that's how I want to bleed until I do this. That's why I keep my roster really, really small. That's my style. A lot.
Can you say that again so I can put that in my bio?
What?
I said, can you say that again so I can put that in my bio?
Yeah, no, bleed on the page or on the screen or whatever. It's all about bleeding,
I want to bleed.
You're not going to believe what this director did until you click, right? Like clickbait title.
I mean, that's not clickbaity stuff, but I am. So my version of clickbait is to be casual.
No, sure.
And I think that this is another thing, right? For me, I talked to a young client the other day who sends all of her stuff on stationery, and I'm onboarding her, and I'm like, well, she's super talented. She's very passionate. That's very clear from her work. But the style of communication is a little bit obtuse. It's a little bit too precious or something along those lines. My personal, and sometimes that works, by the way. Sometimes that's exactly what it is. I'm just speaking from my personal style is, my title and subject lines are always like Zoom coffee ? Now it's like I, spent a gobsmacking amount of money taking people out to drinks because I was like, hey, what do you like doing? Drinking? I like drinking too. Let me buy you a beer and figure out who you are as a person rather than trying to hot sell you on a project. And that's how I built my personal network. And now I throw one of the biggest parties up at Sundance. It's like, it's pretty simple actually to me. And I know it doesn't come intuitively, to some people or whatever. So it's something to work on, but this is something that I work on as well, even though it comes a little bit more naturally to me, I suppose, which is why I do this. And this is my style is, be a cool person. Be a cool person.
Well, yeah, because we're going to work together if we like each other. So
100%. It's like
personable,
be nice, be yourself, and show me what's awesome about you. Like this, you get an opportunity as a creative or anybody in this industry to be yourself. So why the fuck are you trying to be somebody else?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So Jasper, here's why I suck.
No.
So
no, I wanted to chime in real quick, building on what you said, because I did have something else in mind. Because building on what you said, I do believe it is important to be the Michael Bolton, where you just belt out just everything you have and you bleed in the project. But because with me, I'd hire that cat. By the way, I've loved writing since I was 8 years old. Growing up on films, they've resonated with me because they connect with me and they translated something to me that I didn't know I could feel. that was my window into the world in a way. And I feel like that helped me grow as a person. You have these shows like Smallville that really resonate with the human psyche, that really help you learn something. And, you know, maybe whether you don't socialize with a lot of people, whether you do, or maybe you're just a jerk and you want to learn how to be a nicer person, whatever the case it is, this teaches you something. And that's one thing that I find important, is to connect with people, to resonate with them, especially with character development. Because when I grew up, I would say there was kind of a dry spell between the mid to late 2000s where a lot of those movies in the theaters, they just did not really do it for me, because I didn't see a whole lot of character development. I'm like, man, there's really something missing here, until I started to see it come back in some of the stories. And I feel like there needs to be more than that. We are seeing more of that today. Character development. I want to be that person that really connects to people through these stories, because it really made an impact on my life. Why not make it my life purpose to make that same impact on these people that sit at their TVs or in the theaters just eating their popcorn, and just get something when they walk out of the theater, something they'll talk about and maybe apply to their own lives. It could be philosophical, or it could just be something fun. It could be a lot of things. It's a sandbox, you know, but ultimately at the end of the day, I believe it's important to have these strong characters with these strong things that can be applied to life in some films. Sometimes it could be fun. Sometimes it could be something like Jack Sparrow. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a good character, what do you really got? Why are you doing these films? Are you trying to connect to people? Are you doing it for fun? I believe it should be a bit of both.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're high.
I think that it's about the relationships. It's about
Passion.
the relationships that those characters have as well, you know, and you can only have that from having great characters. You know, I'll tell you this. So like, you know, because I've been doing the same style in different forms, right? Working with writers, developing their material and trying to sell it. They always used to ask me, why don't you be my manager? Like, I want to work with you on more projects. And I said, I don't want to do that because I don't want to deal with people. I prefer to deal with projects, and we can be very clear about what that project is. And then but if getting into your issues, I don't know if I want to deal with that all of the time. And then
professional relationship.
Yeah, and so then I used to take meetings on the rooftop pool, which sounds delicious at this time of year, but is obviously not what I'm going to do, of the 60 Hotel in Beverly Hills. And it's this little boutique hotel, and some of the agencies are around there, and they'd come and like do drinks there as well. But at 3 p.m. Fridays for like years, over summer, I would have a pina colada up there and have my meeting come up. And it was awesome. Great. Like, it's the best. So one of the busboys eventually asked me, you know, and he'd been there for a while. He asked me, he was like, hey man, so what do you do? And he was like, you're here in a swimsuit drinking a pina colada, and people come in, they're in suits, and you're always smoking a cigarette or something like that. And I was like, that's hot. That's showbiz, baby. No, but I didn't say that. But, you know, I told him I was like, well, I'm an independent producer, and, you know, blah, 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 blah. And he was like, oh, cool. I made this graphic novel. Can I tell you a little? I'd love to take you out for coffee and pick your brain. And I said, sure. You know, that's fine. You know, so I set it for 9 a.m. on like a Saturday, which is the worst time for a meeting, because I was like, he's not going to show up, or he's going to cancel or something. He didn't. I emailed him at 6 that morning, and he was like, I've been up all night prepping for the meeting. I'm very excited and stuff like that. And he sent me over a graphic novel that he had made, and it was really cool. It wasn't something that I could produce because it was at a very, very early stage. But, you know, there's something really interesting in it. It was sci-fi, and, you know, I think it was very like, you know, relevant time wise, and had a lot of like metaphors and stuff in it, and it was great, you know. So anyway, so I take the meeting, and, you know, I'm basically like, what can I do? How can I help? You know, we're at coffee. How can I help? And basically he was like, well, I'd like somebody to give me advice and stuff. And I was like, okay, well, first rule of Fight Club is that this shit is really fucking hard. So if there's something else you could do or would like to do, you should go do that. And he was like, there's nothing else I'd like to do. And I said, okay. And I said, why? Why are you out here? And he told me that he was, you know, from Philly, and his growing up was very, very hard, and inclusive of him having cancer twice before the time he was 10. So he basically lived in a hospital for the first 10 years of his life. And I said, wow, that's a lot. And he goes, yeah. And this guy's the brightest bulb of sunshine you've ever fucking met, by the way. He is a beautiful human being and a beautiful fucking soul and a consummate creator. But my point is, I said, okay, but how does that relate to storytelling? And he goes, well, the only thing that would ever make me happy as a kid was the posters of Disney movies, of animated Disney movies that were on the walls of the children's hospital. And I mean, and he said, if I could do anything, I've always thought, why would I do anything else besides try to bring a smile to those other kids in those hospitals like I was? And I was like, well, damn. It's like, I was like, your project's not ready for anybody to produce. It won't be for quite a while, but I'm down to give you advice and kind of, help out in whatever way I can, because you're the storyteller that we need. And maybe the storyteller that also gets passed up because he's not ready or whatever. And I'm like, fuck it. Like, that's not my style. Like, so, it's been a cool journey, but he was the first person to convince me to be a manager. And I thought to myself, well, let me see if I can find more stories like his. That's what I've done. And, I'm very proud of the filmmakers that I work with. I'm very proud of the writers that I work with and the graphic novel creators. Everybody's got their own journey, and they're great human beings. I count them as friends. I count myself as a fan of their work, and I'm stoked to celebrate them with shots or beers or whatever, cigars, after their wins. And even in the losses, we go out and celebrate. That's the biggest thing is victory or not to.
Yeah. It's like,
I love that story. That's beautifully said.
Yeah, that was great. Jasper, I had a question for you. So I love hearing all that with the writing process. And this question might be pretty obvious with the answer that I'm going to get from you, but for directors, how important are short films when they're trying to kind of like get your attention or be a potential client of yours? How important is their catalog, or however many short films they have? How important is that for you to check out?
Show me something. A director has to direct, like a writer has to write. There has to be something. And it has to be, it's funny, like somebody, asked me the other day on like, it was one of the MFA students or something. And they were like, I've got this script that might be a little bit more up your alley. And I was like, cool, tell me about it. I was like, yeah, it's a cool premise. Like, he's like, it needs a little bit of work, but I'll send it over to you and, maybe I can work on it with you. And I said, if you think it needs a little bit of work, I'm going to think it needs way, way, way more work. If there's something that you can do to polish something, polish it as far as you can, and then you pass it up the chain. Don't go half-cocked because you think that there's a timeline. I mean, the timeline is artificial. If you're putting a timeline on it that's like, hey, I need to make money, you need to go get a job. That's my biggest thing. Like, keep a job. Like, fucking hard.
So I think, like, if you are going to be somebody who puts in the polish, don't say it needs work. Let them decide.
Yeah, at least do that. But I would say push it as far as you can. And for directors specifically, I mean, I represent 2 directors that only have short films. And one of them is a writer and one of them is not. The first feature is really important. But it's all really important is the thing. So what people don't want to hear sometimes as I go through their catalog is you don't have the project yet. And that is tough to hear, but it's also a piece of, love, because people spend a lot of time being like, why isn't this working? I've written 8,000 scripts. I've directed 8,000 short films. It's like, well, you might not have still directed the one you need to direct. You might not have done the one that you need to write. I don't care if you've got 1 or 1,000. if you don't have the one, there's no point in the other 1,000, unfortunately. I mean, sure, training and all this kind of stuff is important, but that's what it is, and I'm working on a client's short film right now with her, that she's going to shoot during, in a couple of weeks, actually, like during the pandemic. And we've gone back and forth a lot on this 6-page script. And this isn't going to make me money. This is not a money-making proposition. Like, this is what I talk. This is, circling, going for a circle. This is something about her creative development and her career and her voice, and finally having somebody go, hey, do the thing that you think you should do for you. And that is your voice very singularly. If you don't have that, I don't care what it is. It's not crossing my desk, because it's not you. That's the problem, in the writing or in the directing, and it doesn't matter budget wise either. I've seen very expensive short films that are total dog shit. And I've seen very cheap films that are gold. And then I think, so yeah, I mean, you have to have material, but you have to have that one project that's going to catch that rep's eye or something along those lines. And it's not just like, oh, do they like me? It's like, oh, do they understand me? Because I'll tell you this,
right?
For sure. Because you'll also have a coach or a manager who are not on the same page as you, developing your career towards something that you don't like. Definitely. So why would you do that? So there's so many people think that it's this simple pathway, and it is, but it's not the pathway most people think it is. The pathway is be the artist you want to be, because nobody's going to pay you to do it. Mm-hmm. And if you can get there, then that's attractive to fucking anybody that's got half of a brain. If you're not, that is what it is, and that can be at any genre, so that's the way that I look at things.
You also can smell the authenticity or lack of,
100%.
Get a little closer to your mic.
Me? Really?
Okay. Yeah.
No.
With that being said, Jasper, when it comes to you specifically, I know you say you don't really like look for the talent, like they usually come to you, which is really awesome to be in that position. But is there ever like moment in where you're just like, oh, like let me check out some work, kind of like on your own merit, and then you find someone and you personally reach out to them to tell them like, hey, you want to work together, so on and so forth? Is that very common for you to do, or it's not really like something that you do anymore?
Yeah. I'm not opposed to it. I've seen, I think it's tricky though, because everybody and their mom thinks that they got to be with CAA, that they have to be with anonymous content and stuff. And sure, I know a lot of those people. I share clients with a lot of those people. They're fucking awesome.
What's CAA, just for the audience?
Creative Artist Agency. I'm pretty sure that's what CAA stands for.
Cool.
It's like the biggest agency for artists in the world. They rep everybody. But that's the wrong goal. If that's somebody's goal, which it is a lot of people's goal, they're missing the point, which again is like they're looking at a company name rather than a person's name. And the person on the other side of the phone is a human being. And I know people that are at the top dog agencies with the top dogs and everything like that, or like management companies or whatever. It's the name. And that's great. And then they never work. And they feel completely unfulfilled, right? Like, and it's the opposite side as well. I'm just saying it's a mixed bag. I'm not saying big agencies are bad or brand names are bad. I'm saying there are very good people at them, but are they the correct person for you? So like, in think of going and looking for people, like, a lot of the people that I work with is very intimate, and because of that nature, like me going, looking for somebody or something like that. Like I've discovered a couple singular voices through their films, 100%. but it's not something that's more the exception than the rule. And honestly, like, I'm not a big roster builder. Like, there are people out there with a shit that are always adding and churning and burning, like a sales process, which is great. That's not my style, so I don't go out and headhunt a lot. I don't really get into competitive situations. I get into a trust and a friendship thing. And then it's like, from there, like, we grow into like, cool, well, let's vote. Our goals are aligned. Our visions are aligned. Maybe we can figure out something, and take it very casually and slowly. It's like dating, it's like, I'm a serial monogamist, and I'm a serial monogamist with clients. Well, that sounds weird. So I'm going to backtrack on that one, but no, my point,
pretty straightforward of the relationship, right? So that you can be more careful with the direction and management of them,
For sure. And you can have real talk.
I think that was a fine metaphor.
Yeah. And I think you can have real talk.
Yeah.
Real talk is the most important thing, because you're not going to win any of these battles. Here's another thing that I say. All of it's fucking impossible. Period. Get on board with it all being impossible. If you can get on board with it all being impossible, you're going to be fucking stoked when you have a good meeting. You're going to be fucking stoked when something awesome happens. If you think it's all possible and it's owed to you, or you somehow deserve it, you're going to be so upset every day of your damn life. It's unreal.
Yeah, absolutely.
God. I would say pick up the law of attraction, or I give it to clients or something like that. And I'm like, be happy, find happiness some way, be happy with the product that you create, because nobody's paying you to create that product. Create the products you want to create. That's the weird thing. Create the product you want to create for creating it. People are going to like that. But people, that requires a lot of confidence, and and a lot of people don't have that, and they don't want to take that risk. They want to play it safe, and by playing it safe, most people miss the point.
That's what a lot of I think that's what happens with, there are certain phrases that become so used that people forget why they're used in the first place. But I think that's what loving what you do means.
For sure.
Like, you have to love doing it, not like, I would love to have a movie made. It's, I want to make a movie, right? Or, you know what I mean?
I want to make
the
this.
Of it is what you,
for the art,
not the fact that it's like, I want to have a cool list of movies I've made on my
or whatever.
Exactly. Like, you have to want to do the process, and so being that it is this crazy impossible process, you have to love doing it to keep you going.
Oh, for sure. And it's tough. I mean, I always talk about enjoying the cry moments with my clients, and like, it's great successes that we celebrate. And then it's also the things that didn't necessarily go their way, but they got really close on. Like, those are the learning moments. It's like, after everything with a client, I always tell them, like, oh, wait, what did we learn this time? What did you learn this time? Like, for better or for worse, what did you learn? And go buy yourself a drink, or I'll buy you a drink, because learning something is the battle. It isn't part of the battle. It is the battle.
And that's kind of what I wanted to chime in on. That's actually what I was going to say is, after every experience, you want to walk away saying that you learned something. You don't want to be, just do this to have something, to have a resume and have this big old shield. It's like, hey, I'm cool. Hey, you see, I'm cool right here. You want to be the person that enjoys what you do, saying, this is me. I'm cool because this is me, and this is what I love to do. And I'm learning as I'm growing, because if you don't grow, I mean, we all had to learn how to walk when we were toddlers. Nobody just kicked us in the head every time we fell down. It's like, oh, you piece of dirt, you can't walk. So why should we do that to ourselves, right? You can't kick yourself around like that.
It reminds me of a little.
Gotta learn.
It kind of reminds me of a little bit of a conversation I had with my brother, where about like this idea of I am cool, right? I don't think we should look for, like, I think it's kind of stupid to be cool. You have to do cool things, That's kind of how I see it. Like, what that person does is cool. I don't know if they are cool, but it's like what they do is cool, is kind of how I like to see things, more than
to add on that, I want to say, like, just feeling cool is just being yourself, kind of building on what Jasper said, just saying, I'm cool because I feel cool with myself, kind of. Not like overly egotistical, like, smoking a cigarette and having a pina colada in the pool. And
I do like smoking a cigarette and having a pina colada. Cool.
Yeah, I guess to compare what I was saying, pretty cool. I guess to compare what I was saying is like, Jim Carrey isn't cool, but what he does is cool. You know, I guess is what.
Oh
yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
guy,
sure.
cool guy.
Listen, I was a nationally ranked Pokemon the card game player far too late in my 20s. So, like, you know.
That's pretty cool.
Wait, were you really?
Yeah. Anyways, guys, this has been a
That
total
is
blast.
cool.
I'm gonna have to thank you. I'm gonna have to wrap it up and get out of here. I had a call about 20 minutes ago. So,
Ooh.
I mean,
but
we were,
it's been great hanging and stuff like that and talking. And I'm gonna read the outro.
yeah.
And we'll go from there. So I said, all right, I think that'll do it for this edition of Filmocracy Talks. I hope you all had as much fun and learned as much as I did. Remember to join us every 2 weeks as we discuss topics that you all care the most about. And by all means, if anyone has a particular topic you want to discuss, you can shoot Jose an email. His email is jose@filmocracy.com, and we will leave it at that. Good night, everyone.
Awesome.
Good night.